Not a single swear. Oh shit! We already messed it up.
This podcast is for kids. We're gonna swear on the Muppets.
Yeah. Are we assuming? Do we think kids are listening?
I don't think so. I don't think kids care.
No. Muppets really. I mean, it's like for kids, but really, it's like not. Like if you want kid stuff, watch Sesame Street. Muppets are for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they said that they tried to make this movie for adults, but also kids kind of as well.
Yeah, like it's adult friendly. But
I mean, we'll talk about it, but like in the pilot episode of the Muppet Show, it's like they make a smoking joke and one of somebody's smoking like a cigarette. It's like just 70s, man.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
gonna do you and then Blue Frog for the order.
Okay. This is Muppet's evil nemesis. I don't know. It's just cute.
What did he do to the Muppets?
What?
What did he do to the Muppets? Their nemesis.
Well, they're not. He's not a nemesis. A lot of people think they are. He's not a nemesis, but he is poison.
Okay. Well, you can be poison and not be a nemesis.
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay. Justin Blue Frog.
Justin Blue Frog.
I said Jess and Blue Frog, but you can call him Justin Blue Frog if you want.
Maybe.
He didn't really look like a Justin to me, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He's so cute. I love him so much. Top tier. Find. Anyway, okay. Me. And then Zach.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's do it. Are you ready with Audacity?
I'm ready. Thank you for asking.
In 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 437 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Jess.
And in today's episode, we're going to be going over movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we're going to be kicking off our Muppets series with 1979's The Muppet Movie, as well as talking a little bit about the pilot episode of The Muppet Show from 1976. Mm-hmm. Are you excited to talk? Are you excited for your series, Jess? Because Jess did plan this series out.
Yeah. Well, me and Andrew, but I was the one.
He's not here, so I don't give him credit.
He's not here. But yeah, I love the Muppets. What is the series going to be? I don't know. I'm excited to find out. I just think that they're neat. And yeah, I'm really excited. And I'm excited to talk specific. I'm excited to compare the pilot and the first Muppet movie. What is this movie called? Because
it's the Muppet movie.
The Muppet Movie. Yeah, because there was also the new one called The Muppets.
That's just called The Muppets, yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, don't touch my ugh. Did you see that frog?
Yeah, we're trying to keep this PG-13, okay?
I know. Oh. I have a frog with me for those who are only listening and not watching.
A handsy frog.
It's very handsy. It just it's pretty wily. Whatever. Anyway. Oh my goodness, no. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what you thought. I know what I think. But I'm excited for the series too. I think Muppets are fun. They make me feel good. They make me laugh. And the end.
That's it, folks. That's it. That's the episode.
That's the episode. Thank you for listening. If you like what we do, you should subscribe.
You gonna do the end notes for us?
Yeah. I'm gonna give a shout out to all our patrons: Chad Newsom, Cam. Is Cam still a patron? Yeah.
This is so we're like really vamping for the beginning. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. Haha.
Right. We'll jump into it. Let's just
jump right in. I think we just gotta jump right in. Like a frog into a pond.
There you go. Well, let's make that rainbow connection. All right. I'm going to start off. I'm going to talk briefly about Babylon, which is I guess bombing in theaters right now. It's the latest, but I'm not going to talk about a lot about it because I know Michael O'Malley has seen it, and I think it's one of those that's probably better to like kind of bounce off between two people.
Hmm.
This is the latest, the Hollywood epic from Damien Chazelle, who directed Whiplash and La La Land and First Man. And this one it clearly is pretty decently influenced by Hollywood Babylon, the Kenneth Anger piece, in terms of like just kind of depicting the early days of Hollywood in this era of unbridled decadence and depravity, where the core of the story you're following. This initially he's just kind of like a kind of errand boy type person. Manny Torres, played by Diego Calva, who is working running errands for a Hollywood executive, and he kind of is trying to work his way up through the movies. Then you have Margot Robbie playing a actress or a burgeoning actress named Nellie Leroy, who is also trying to kind of get in the movies, make a name for herself. You have Brad Pitt, who plays a kind of a established Hollywood star named Jack Conrad. And those are the main three people that you're following through this movie. It opens with like this gigantic party at this executive's mansion, where you just see like people all over the place. There's people naked, there's people fucking each other, there's like booze all over the place, there's animals, there's a guy getting pissed on, there's dead, sex workers, or like not dead sex but OD'd sex workers. It's just a lot like that, like it just opens you with that, and it's a lot.
So it almost sounds like a Baz Luhrmann movie or something.
It definitely kind of wishes it was a Baz Luhrmann movie, for sure. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I was kind of. This one didn't really do much for me. I was a little disappointed. Like I've liked all of Damien Chazelle's movies up to this point. It's not like he's somebody who I'm like, screw that guy.
Yeah.
I've liked all of his movies up to this point. This one just kind of feels like, it feels a little bit like the guy who doesn't drink and hasn't had sex with anybody in college tries like his first beer, and then this is like his retelling of what it's like to be crazy. It kind of just feels, for a movie that opens with this, this giant party where people are like, where at one point they're panning around the party and you're seeing people in different positions having sex with one another. It feels like saying that it's a very tame movie. Like it feels like it's kind of like pushing the boundaries for how somebody who has never been like in a boundary pushing situation would assume that the boundaries are being pushed, when
Right.
actually it's just kind of like this, it's kind of like just this excess with no like real like planning or thought behind it, or at least this kind of genuine, like it doesn't feel genuine at all. It just kind of feels like it's doing that to be evocative. It's like,
Right.
but you're supposed to be there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's people having sex and doing coke and vomiting and falling places and running out and hitting
It's so
stuff.
real, man. That's how it really
Yeah,
is.
and like, I went and it's kind of one of those yeah, and it's just kind of, this era is just so insane. And then so in the rest of the movie you kind of pick it up more. The Manny character becomes much more involved in the Hollywood system. You see like Jack Conrad, the Brad Pitt character, starts at the top of the hill, and it's started, you see him slowly decline through the years. And then you see Margot Robbie's character kind of rise and then fall.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think it's way too overlong. I just really didn't, there wasn't really a character that you could like grasp onto as like, this is the person I kind of want to go like ride on this thing with.
Right.
Like the Manny character that Diego Calva plays is just kind of personalityless. The Margot Robbie character is just kind of her. It's very one note. She's always just kind of this volatile person, which is like, fine, but she just kind of plays that one note for like the 3 hour runtime. And then Brad Pitt's kind of trying to do like more interesting stuff with the character, but it's just kind of a thinly written character. It's really not that. It really doesn't have much substance to it. And so honestly, like that's how I like it's just kind of this 3 hour movie about excess in Hollywood, and it just really felt like, and like at the end, it kind of like tries to do like that. This era was insane and we were debauched and
Right.
this is crazy, but the movies, man, like I still love them even though I barely got out of it with my life. Like I still love the movies.
Right.
And I'm kind of, and like at the end of it, I was like, do you like the movies, Damien Chazelle? Like this whole movie seems like you fucking hate cinema and you don't like it, like Hollywood at all. And you're just kind of like, all right, like, like I could totally be fine with that if you didn't have like this. He has this whole montage at the end of the movie of like all like the history of cinema from like the early 1900s to like today. Like there's this scene where like the characters from Avatar fly through and you're just like, what the hell is
Like
going on
the
here?
blue characters from Avatar.
Yeah, you're just
Yeah.
like, what's going on here? So
At
I
the
don't
end
know.
of this movie.
Yeah, at the end of this movie there's a whole montage, and so I
Okay.
don't know, like I said, like it's
So it's supposed to be like a loving like send off, but it
it's not
came
supposed
off as so brass or what?
No, it's supposed to be kind of like one of these, like there's just all this insanity and all this craziness and like everybody either is dead or barely got out alive.
Mm.
And at the end it's kind of like this reflection on, but the movies still, like the movies are still magic. And I'm kind of like, sure, I'm like, well, one, I never felt like I bought that at any point throughout the course of this movie. And two, the movie is just so like um is just so like mean spirited toward like the whole Hollywood process that you're just kind of like,
Right.
do you like you're like, do you really like the movie? It's kind of like I saw somebody, it is this way, but I saw somebody describe it. It's kind of like, because it's taking place specifically in the era where sound is going into, or silence are going into sound.
Right.
And so it's kind of like this mix between like Boogie Nights and Singing in the Rain. And at the end of the movie, the character goes to the theater and is watching Singing in the Rain. And like after I saw the movie, the person I was with, I was just kind of like, all this movie made me want to do is watch Singing in the Rain because it's so much better, and it covers this topic so much better.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like I'll be curious to kind of get into it with Michael since he's going to see it as
Mhm.
well. But like it just felt it's just like a very empty movie for 3 hours.
Yeah.
I
That's so long too for
yeah,
something to say basically nothing.
like the next movie I'm going to talk about is also 3 hours long, but it's the complete opposite. I did not feel empty at all. I felt very
Right.
like cup is full here.
Mm.
This one just kind of felt like it was just kind of flailing the whole time, and I never was able to really link on. The other issue I had with it, just before I move on, is that it has this character, Lady Fei Zhu, who is this Chinese immigrant who in this movie is kind of she like she's just kind of a frequenter of these different parties, is clearly gay, and like does like the title cards and like the speech cards for silent movies.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why her character veers off and kind of disappears after a while. But it's clearly somebody who's kind of framed a little bit on um, Anime Wong, who is a pretty famous figure from the silent era and early sound era of Hollywood. Chinese immigrant who came here, and it's like a really super interesting person. Like in terms of if you like read about her history, like just kind of a fascinating figure. Was this relatively, you can kind of tell that she's clearly bisexual, like this kind of bisexual beauty. She's the one, if you've seen like Shanghai Express and a number of other she's in a number of early Marlene Dietrich films, because she and Marlene Dietrich were an item for a while. And it's just kind of this fascinating like early queer figure in movies,
Like Marlene Dietrich.
like Marlene Dietrich. But Marlene Dietrich, because she was white and German, had a much more pronounced career than Anna May Wong did. But just like a super interesting figure. And this is like the second piece of media between this and that Ryan Murphy like alternative Hollywood show that they did. That's just really not given like her like like they just kind of like in this movie, I just feel like she's there to kind of be like, oh, it's it's showing the kind of the small amounts of diversity in Hollywood, the small amounts of diversity in like gender in Hollywood,
Right.
and things like that. And she's not really given much of like, again, she's just like another like kind of like half written character that really doesn't get much to do. And I'm kind of like, can we like just make a movie about Anime Wong that
Yeah.
like treats her like a person that like we can kind of dig into it, because she's a very fascinating figure and one that people should go like back and watch some of her movies with that in mind. And I don't know, it just kind of annoyed me that that's how her character was treated in this movie. So anyway, just a little aside on my rants about but Babylon, it's in theaters now. It probably won't be for very much longer. I really can't. I'm having a hard time recommending it to people. So,
Mm.
especially with that runtime, I'm just like it's tough.
Huh. Gotcha.
But yeah, but let me talk about a movie that I was way more into, and I did not expect to be this into, but I guess I'm Avatar pilled now.
Okay.
So Avatar: Way of the Water. Um, I was kind of like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go see this. So I watched the first Avatar for the first time since, oh shoot, when did that movie come out? 2008, 2009,
Really? 2009.
2009.
Holy moly.
So I had not watched Avatar since it literally came out in 2009.
Wow.
And it's fine. I'm kind of, I think it's it doesn't it very it's whatever. I'm kind of just whatever to the first Avatar movie. I don't dislike it at all, but it also doesn't like, I don't have this reverence that I think some people have.
Yeah.
I'm way, way, way more into Avatar: The Way of the Water. Like this one, I'll preface also, I watched this in the IMAX 3D high frame rate format. If you're gonna go see that, like it's it's a little pricier than a normal ticket, but like
Do it.
it's 100% worth it. It's a fucking ride, and you also get to see the trailer for the new Mission Impossible movie before it, where Tom Cruise like rides off this cliff, and it's awesome.
Okay.
But Avatar: The Way of the Water, this one, it's set years after the events of the first movie. This, you kind of catch up with the main characters, Jake and Natiri, from the first movie, and they've had 3 kids and 1 adopted kid who's like this she's like spawned off of the dead avatar of Sigourney Weaver. So it's like Sigourney Weaver as like this 13-year-old like teenager, which is kind of weird, but you kind of work with it.
Wait. Sigourney Weaver's human alive?
No, so Sigourney Weaver's character dies in the first Avatar.
Oh, right.
And so they took like the avatar body of the Sigourney Weaver character and like put her in some machine. And that's I kind of like about this movie, is doesn't it fucking explain anything. It's just kind of like it's very much like the first Avatar. It just like tosses you in and kind of goes, oh, if you figure it out, cool. But if not, I don't care. And so they took a clone out of that body and made, so it's like a teenage Sigourney Weaver avatar that Sigourney Weaver's playing, which is just kind of funny to me. I don't know.
It kind of reminded me of Baby Colin Robinson from What We Do in the Shadow show.
It's a little bit. So yeah, so you're watching. So honestly, you don't really deal with Jake and Natiri, the main characters from the first movie, like nearly as much. They definitely show up a lot, but a lot of the time you're spending with the younger characters, the two sons, the teenage Sigourney Weaver, and this little child, the youngest of the kids that they have, and like I said, it picks up a number of years after the first movie. The amazing decision is that they make is that they bring back to life the Stephen Lang Colonel character, the bad guy from the first movie, and they like put all of they go, oh, well, we took like DNA that we saved so we can put them into the avatar bodies in case they die. So then like him and his team, all the bad guys from the first movie, come back to life as like avatars, and it's fucking hilarious and great. because after watching
Wow.
the first movie, I was like, this guy, like Stephen Lang, is having himself a time in this. Like, it's just a silly ass crazy performance, and I love it. And so they bring him back, and like they have like all these army people like in the avatar bodies. But like, I'm sure if you've seen like on Twitter or something, there's like one that like has like all camo and like these sunglasses on. He looks like, some ultra military guy that you would see at like a Walmart, but he has the avatar body.
So do they still have human like counterparts somewhere off in
No,
a
those they're dead. So they're dead. So they're just the avatar people.
so are
They've like
they
they've like perfected the technology to a degree where you don't have to be in the machine this time. Because
okay.
really there's no human scenes. The only
Okay.
human scenes you get is you see the scientist a little bit from the first movie. You see some of the military people from some new military people, um, like that's led by Edie Falco. And then you see there's these two other characters, including Jermaine Clement, who show up later in the movie. But that's about the extent of the human. The predominant part of this movie is all Avatar characters. Um, and I don't know. I really like this. It's just this like big, and maybe this is how some people attach to the first movie. I think I just kind of it clicked with me in this one more because this movie is less. The narrative is still a mess. Like it's
Right.
not like I'm not gonna come here and be like the narrative makes a lot. No, it's a mess. It's kind of
Okay.
all over the place. The acting is very exaggerated. It's kind of but I'm kind of just like that's what these movies are gonna be.
Mhm.
Um, but really like what's so fun about this is it's very much like a vibes movie. Like I said, there's two big action set pieces. Um, but for the most part, there's not a lot of action. It's a lot of like them hanging out in the forest part of the world, and then they move to the water part of the world. And the water part, once they get there, it's they're learning about all these new creatures. You meet these new avatars that live like in the water that have like that have like different. Their bodies are kind of different, so they're able to acclimate to the water a lot better. You have all of these new creatures. Like it's so like there's just like this large swath of the movie that's just them like hanging out, learning stuff, meeting creatures, things like that. And you're just like, yeah, this is awesome. Like this is just fun. And like at the same time, like this animation, this digital approach that James Cameron has taken is just unreal. How like realistic at times these characters look, and how realistic like the water looks, and like like the characters how they interact with like there's this one you'll see it'll be raining, and like the way like the rain drips off of them just has this realistic quality to it.
Huh.
The way that like a creature will splash and they'll have a splash of water, stuff like that. Like it's insane, like the technology involved to like
Mm.
animate this thing. You can see why it took so long like it took 5 years or whatever it did
Holy
to
shit.
like make this movie. um and so yeah, I don't in terms of like again like in terms of the plot, there's really not that much to get into. This time around, like I said, you have the bad guys kind of from the first one have been reincarnated as these avatar characters. They're tasked with getting getting Jake Sully and his family, and getting rid of them so that the humans can colonize the planet more. um and so that's pretty much the gist of it. They end up moving from like the forest to the water to kind of try to escape them. But yeah, I like this going back to like just as a move like this just is just like this gaudy, ambitious, um really fucking creative, just insane blockbuster that you like. I think I've warmed to a lot of these types of movies because of how bland blockbuster filmmaking has become.
Yeah.
You just watch not and that's not just even Marvel movies, just a lot of blockbuster movies in general have become so bland and lifeless. You look at like kind of the even like the television output, and it's so uninspired. And so like even though this one is not a perfect movie script wise or whatever, you like have to appreciate just how like like a Marvel movie or a Disney movie in general would, even though this is technically a Disney movie, but I kind of am like it's James Cameron movie first off. Like
Right.
um like a movie, a Marvel movie or a DC movie or something like that, like you're not going to get a scene or like 30 to 45 to an hour of scenes in Black Adam where they just chill out and like engage in the world and like talk to one another.
Right.
That doesn't further the plot at all. That's just like them hanging out. And I'm like, I kind of like that, like I get why this movie's that long, because
Right.
there's like a long 45, 30, 45 minute action sequence at the end to kind of climax the whole thing. There's a pretty big action sequence midway through that kind of goes, hey, we got to get out of the forest place. And then other than that, it's just them kind of hanging out in this world, and like interacting with this world. And like it plays up just kind of how cool and creative this whole place is, and how kind of fascinating it becomes. And I'm like, I dig that. Like, I'm like, we need
Mhm.
more, we need more blockbusters that are doing that are just kind of weird, that um are just kind of there to be like, we're a big ass movie that you paid to go see, and you're just gonna kind of like get swept up into this world for this 3 hours. And
Right.
I was super locked in the entire time. I don't know. I think like, again, like head to the movie, like you may not like love this movie, but I can't recommend enough like just going and experiencing it, because it really is just like this. It just feels so like foreign, like
Immersive.
immersive in like this foreign concept in like
Mhm.
the output of like blockbuster filmmaking today. I mean,
Mm.
there's stuff that I talked about like in the episode last week, stuff like RRR or Ambulance or Top Gun Maverick that are good. But this one is just kind of different, because it's very much like it's completely, even though Avatar, is the top movie of all time in terms of box office, like it still kind of feels like this. It doesn't really feel like it kind of works its way as much into like just daily conversation as as like, Marvel or Disney, like animated movies, or
Mhm.
DC characters, or things like that. Can you can hear people making references to like Captain America or Batman or stuff like that more often than Avatar.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's kind of cool just seeing like this really big, ambitious, kind of laid back blockbuster like this, that, I'm just kind of like, yeah, like we need more of this, because we don't need more of, it's like setting up future movies, because he's already said that they're going to do 5 movies or whatever.
Mhm.
But it also spends so much time just kind of letting you like sit in the world. It reminds me of an interview I read by Miyazaki, where he's talking about somebody asked him about like in his movies, they're just kind of like these quiet moments where like the character will just sit there, and like you'll just have like this intricately, beautifully animated sequence. And but it has nothing to do with the plot. It has nothing, that the characters don't talk about anything. It's just kind of quiet. And he's like, yeah, like you need to like live in the world a little bit, like that you have to
Yeah.
get immersed in it a little bit. And I appreciate that like James Cameron is like, yeah, like you're just gonna do, like we need to have scenes, like the movies will be over long, but we need that, because you need to like fully invest into what this world is.
Mhm.
And it's just kind of a lesson again to like um other movies, that like, if like with something like Black Panther 2, like if you're going to be 2 hours and 30 minutes or whatever, like you got to like let people sink into the world. You can't
Right.
just be sitting there throwing exposition at them constantly.
Just fighting scenes, fighting scenes, fighting scenes. That wouldn't be
Yeah,
fun.
because I mean, like I said, like you could sit there and like be like, well, how does all this, how did this happen, and what, and you're like, and the movie doesn't really care. It just kind of zooms through. This is where
Yeah.
it does like a quick montage of like, this is what's happened in the interim, and then it like throws you completely into the world, because it's like you can sit there and like puzzle box and figure out all this shit, but like that's not what you're here for. You're here to like
Right.
sit there in the chair with the giant screen in front of you, and like watch them like fly and swoop in the air and duck in the water and do that kind of shit. You're like, that's what you're here to
I'm
do.
sold. Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I think it's a crazy time. I really enjoyed it. I'm pissed that I didn't see it in time to make my list. This probably would have been on my top
Oh
10 movies
shit.
list.
Wow. How
Um,
high? How high?
I forgot what my list was. I'd have to look.
If you
It's
just like up towards the top or somewhere towards the bottom.
No, I'd probably be like in the 6, 7 range, six,
Okay.
seven, 8 range.
That's respectable.
It was also one of those where it was just like an ideal. like again, like I spent the big money on like the IMAX ticket. It
Right.
was so fucking worth it because it was just
Yeah.
like it just immersed you. It was a good like that's my overall like it was just a really satisfying theater experience. Um, and I think that's what kind of sold me as well. So Avatar: Way
Mhm.
of the Water, Zach's Avatar pilled now. I don't know what we got to do.
I'm sold. I want to see it.
Yeah, it's a good time. All right, well we're gonna wrap it up with one final new release. Jesse, we've talked about this a little bit
Okay.
in previous episodes, but I figure we can dig in on Glass Onion,
Yeah.
a Knives Out mystery.
Glass onion.
Give us a real brief refresher. We don't have to go too deep on the synopsis.
Okay. Well, so just quick refresher is a rich character. I don't remember actors' names, but anyway, invites all his friends out. He's basically like an Elon Musk like spoof character. He invites all his friends out to his like private island. Uh, and he's like advertising it as like a fun murder mystery like weekend. Um, but they end up having a real murder on their hands. But
Bum bum bum.
lucky for them, the world-renowned detective Benoit Blanc,
Hmm?
Benoit Blanc, is there to help them solve the mystery.
Yeah. Um. So you said you rewatched Knives Out the other day. What are your
Mhm.
feelings toward the first one?
Um, I mean, it's a lot of. I mean, it's so much fun. I love it. I love with both of these movies how it just like begs you to rewatch it because you're gonna when you have the context that you end up getting, you can see so much more. I couldn't remember what the big mystery, or I remember pieces of the mystery with the first one,
Mhm.
and I knew like the girl kind of sort of I knew there was a medical error thing and the girl was, but I couldn't remember if she had actually called Benoit Blanc up to help her or not. Um, I like I mean, they're both so similar in how they help you, like, parse through all of the characters and stuff,
Mhm.
um, but I don't know, now that I've seen them both, it's hard to say which one I like more because I think they're both super good. I think they're both really good. I think they both start, kind of a little bit where you're watching it and you're like, "Oh, I know what's gonna happen. I can already guess what's gonna happen." With this one, the beginning especially, reminded me a lot of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies,
Mhm.
especially in the scene where the lights go out and everybody's, like, kinda crawling around the house, and they're very suspicious of each other because somebody just got killed, and they don't know who did it, and they're all suspicious of each other. The whole thing that up to that point really reminded me of Bodies, 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 and then we just buckle in and have like a whole third act that takes the whole everything and recontextualizes everything. And um I wasn't totally sure how sold I was on Glass Onion as I was first watching it. I should also say we watched it on Netflix and we watched it on Andrew's dad's TV, which is a nice TV, but it has that motion smoothing thing. So for a while I was just like, man, not this is just okay. And then Andrew halfway through the movie switched it and it felt like we literally started watching a different movie. But I think right around then was when the plot started to kind of turn in on itself a little bit. Um I think that's what's great about both is that they have a way of kind of creating these sort of predictable characters in sort of predictable scenarios, but then everybody has like more or less depth than they originally appear to have, and somehow they end up taking those scenarios that you think you understand completely and just turning them in such fun ways. The dialogue I think is just really really fun. And I just didn't see where I had no idea like where it was going to take it, and it's just a lot of fun. I think that they're both really really strong movies. You've seen both, right?
Yeah. I rewatched it again. I rewatched Glass Onion because we saw it at TIFF. I rewatched it again when it came out a couple or last week or whatever,
Hmm.
or 2 weeks ago, and I still I don't like it as much as the first
Mm.
one. I think the first one kind of rolls together a little bit more. This one, it just kind of takes too long to. I felt this way when I saw it the first time, but it just kind
Hmm.
of takes too long to like really get really get cooking,
Mhm.
Um,
It really does take a
when
long
it gets,
time in the
but when
in the
it does, it's
exposition.
very good. It's
Yeah.
very entertaining, but like it just takes so long to kind of get there that you're just kind of like, all right, like,
Well, yeah, and you're sorta like, "What is this movie?" But then, I don't know, by the time it gets where it's like I appreciate all of it. I really wanna rewatch it, and I just watched
mhm.
it, like, a week or 2 ago. But, yeah, I think it does really take its time with the exposition so much.
I will say though, like I hope that Ryan Johnson keeps kind of making these,
Yeah.
whether periodically or not, just because I do think that I think they're just kind of fun, and I think the the annoying thing is that the way like we just we look at movies like so like harshly the first time,
Mhm.
um that it's just kind of like, oh well, this wasn't good, we got to stop making them, and you're like, no, like I feel like if he makes like 8 of these over his career, like some of them are going to be good, some of them are not going to be that good, some are going to be like whatever. I'm thinking about like so many different um series of movies, even if it's something like Nightmare on Elm Street or
Right.
or Friday, like kind of those horror series where, and even like Agatha Christie movies and adaptations, stuff like that. Like some of them are really good, some of them are fine, some of them aren't good. And you're just kind of like, yeah, just like throw them all out. Like it doesn't always. We don't have to just be banger after banger. Like it's not always that case.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I think like I said, they're so similar, but just different enough, and I don't know, maybe it's, like, the context because the first one is in this eerie, kinda gothic old house, and this is just a completely different setting, completely different tone, but they still have, like, such similar, like, structure. I like how he develops these just total shithead characters, like, every one of his almost all of his characters are just, like, so shitty in such, like, relatable and identifiable ways.
Yeah.
Like the Instagram influencer who's starting to become like a men's rights activist.
Mhm.
Um, or like the I don't know. He just it's neat. I don't know. I enjoy it. I enjoy, I guess, the way he kind of comments and like draws up these caricatures of the types of people we see, in life. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I was reading that, people kind of complain that it seems very like online. It seems very it seems very like very aware of like current events and that might not age very well. And I'm like, I mean, and people have made the point that yeah, but that's also what the case was with a lot of these types of movies. Like they're very
right,
like of an age. And so I don't know. I'm kind of I hope that he keeps making them. He didn't, don't sit there and just make these Ryan Johnson, because
right.
I enjoy your other movies as well. But like I hope he kind of just like him and Daniel Craig just kind of hook up, keep hooking up again and like making these occasionally and like mixing up the
Hmm.
cast, because I agree. I think they're fun.
Yeah, I
It's
like him.
and I kind of like the whole like exercise of like, all right, let's like how are you gonna kind of rework this again, this time,
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Hmm. And still do something completely unique. And I think too when you've seen two of them, you think, okay, I got this, I know, but then you don't, and I like how they turn it, and I don't know how many
Well, it's
times can
also
they do it. I don't know, but I hope that they keep doing it.
yeah, and it's an opportunity also just to kind of like let actors play around. Like you kind of have Daniel
Mhm.
Craig doing his thing, but like you think about like the first movie and like the performances by like Jamie Lee Curtis and Chris Evans and things like
Yeah,
that, and then like in this movie like Janelle Monáe and Dave Batista and Edward, like what they're kind of doing with it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, they're fun little exercises.
yeah,
It's very, it's kind of they're almost like somewhat similar to like the Muppet movie we're about to talk about, where like you have these actors who just kind of pop, famous people who pop up and like do a little thing that's kind of fun. I'm like, I don't know, like whatever. This seems like the like if we're gonna be doing that, this seems to be the kind of optimal way to be doing that nowadays, rather than making them pop up in skin tight suits and be Kortor the Conqueror or whatever. So it's real
anyway,
anti superhero movies today, I guess.
yeah, well, but not anti-Avatar.
Dude, no, Avatar slaps. Um,
Anyway, Glass Onion's a lot of fun. Definitely
yeah.
check it out.
All right. Well, we're gonna We're gonna get the music and light the lights. We're gonna put on some makeup.
We're gonna meet the Muppets.
We're gonna meet the Muppets after this short break.
Nice. Cool. Sorry, sometimes I feel so repetitive.
No, you're fine. I think it went well.
Hmm? I don't like wearing headphones. They hurt my ears. They hurt my head. I cut my hair. Did I show you? Can't remember.
Looks nice.
Thanks. Had you seen the Muppet Show or movie before?
I'd seen clips from the Muppet Show, of like different like different celebrities who had appeared on it, but I never like sat there and watched like an episode from beginning to end.
Mm. I'm just working on the series. You look like you're working on something.
No, I was watching a clip from a daytime show where Dan Stevens was talking about the guest, and the host of the show said, "Well, you must have had to beat off a number of American men for this role, huh?" And he just starts laughing.
What? Is he British?
Yeah. But it's more just you had to like beat off a bunch of American men to like get the role. And he was just like, he just started laughing. He's like, what? All right. Let's talk about some Mups. Let's get Muppy.
I almost fell. Okay, one sec.
Let's get out the standard rich and famous contract.
Draw the standard rich and famous contract.
I wonder how much Orson Welles got paid to do that.
What?
I wonder how much Orson Welles got paid to just like show up, say that one line, and be out of here.
Just spin around dramatically in a chair, say a nice thing in an intimidating way, and then that's it.
Yeah, I honestly like. I don't like. I'm full of like hell yeah, like full steam ahead on doing that. completely sign off on that one. But like, yeah. like I just want to know, like, so Orson, we'll pay you this much.
There's a lot of cameos in this. Wait, we haven't officially started, right?
No.
Okay.
We'll talk about it in a second.
Cool.
I was just like thinking, I wonder how much Orson Welles. Good for Orson Welles. I was listening. This will be a nice exclusive for the viewer, the YouTube people. I was watching this interview that Orson Welles did on the Dick Cavett show, and he was talking about how in like the late 30s he was hiking. He went hiking in the Alps, or something like that, kind of near Austria, with this professor of his, this acting professor, or this acting mentor. I think that's professor, but acting mentor. And he didn't like realize until like midway through the trip that the mentor was like clearly like super into the, at that point, like burgeoning Nazi movement in Germany. It was like super obsessed with Nazis. And he was like, "Oh, that's okay." And so then I guess this guy who Orson Welles was with like got them into this dinner that the Nazi Party was having at that period of time. And at the dinner, Orson Welles sits next to Hitler, and so Dick Cavett's like, "You sat next to Hitler. Like, what was Hitler like?" And he's like, honestly, he's like, I don't remember a thing he said or a thing that happened because he was such like a boring personality that like he's like I can't even he's like, I know you want me to come up with something, but I can't even recall something.
He wasn't even like
Like,
a charismatic anything.
no, he was like just the boring,
Huh.
personalityless like person. And he was just, and he's like, because Dick Cavett's like going, well, what, like was trying to like milk, like what, what was he? And he was just like, he's like, honestly, I have nothing for you, because I was like, he was so goddamn bland that like I can't, I don't remember the dinner, and I don't remember anything that dude said to me. And I was like,
It's
I'm like,
nuts.
fucking Orson Welles, man. He always had a fucking story.
I got distracted in the middle. I listened to the entire thing, and I'm intrigued, but also Cooper right now. Look at his. Look how he's. Do you see how he's upside down with his little paw?
Yeah, that's how they sleep. That's how fluffballs sleep.
He's so cute. He's so cute. I had to take pictures. I love him so much. Are you like obsessed with your cats? Yeah, you are. You get it.
I mean, I like them, but I don't think I'm obsessed with them.
I love my cats so much. Cooper, why don't you come sit with me? I'm obsessed.
Why'd you wake him up?
He got up. He got up on his own. He saw me talking. He heard me talking about him. He got embarrassed. I know. Come sit with me. Come here, handsome. Come here, handsome pants.
Cooper, I heard you.
Cooper, it's your friend Zach. You like to snuggle with him.
Yeah, it's your snuggle buddy.
It's your snuggle friend Zach.
So do I not have do I not get to stay with y'all anymore and snuggle with Cooper if I come visit?
You can. You could. I mean, we could sleep on the couch and give you my room, or we'll figure out something.
Because me and Cooper, we gotta get some snugs in.
I mean, there's also couches. We redesigned the music room now. It's very chill, and there's a TV and everything in there.
Oh, okay. I just need a way so that me and Cooper can.
I know. Cooper looks forward to those snuggles.
We get up in there.
You really do. You get up in there. He looks forward to
Cooper,
it.
that's your foot.
That's his foot.
All right. We'll start talking about the Muppets.
The Muppet. The Cooper Show.
All right, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 437 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be kicking off our Muppet series with the Muppet Movie from 1979. Directed by James Frawley, from a script by Jerry Jewell and Jack Burns, the film stars Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Charles Durning, and Austin Pendleton, along with a large number of celebrity cameos. After Kermit the Frog decides to pursue a movie career, he starts his cross-country trip from Florida to California. Along the way, he meets and befriends Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, and rock musicians Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. When Kermit is offered a job by Doc Hopper to advertise the fried frog legs at his restaurant chain, Kermit turns Hopper down. However, Hopper refuses to relent and pursues Kermit and his companions to a final showdown. When the film was released in 1979, the Emmy Award-winning television series The Muppet Show was the highest-rated syndicated show in the U.S. and had an estimated 235 million television viewers in 102 countries. Producer and Muppet performer Jim Henson, who created the puppet characters in their comedy variety show, described the Muppet Movie as the reverse approach of the series. On television, the Muppets invited guests to their stage, whereas in the film, the characters ventured into the real world for the first time. Mm-hmm. The character Lou Lord, played by Orson Welles, was named in honor of British entertainment executive Sir Lou Grade, whose company, Association Film Distribution, served as domestic distributor for the film. Grade was already familiar with the potential of the Muppet brand. He agreed to fund Henson's concept for a television show after U.S. networks turned down the opportunity to give the puppet characters their own series. Based in London, Grade arranged for the show to be taped at the company studios there and distributed the program worldwide through his organization. And in that, subsequent subsequently led to the international popularity of the Muppets. Sets for the film were constructed 6 feet high to conceal the puppeteers underneath, who were equipped with instant video playback monitors to observe their performance as it was being filmed. For the sequence of Kermit the Frog playing the banjo in the swamp, a bathysphere or airtight underwater container was built to hold performer Jim Henson. During the 3 days it took to film the scenes, Henson operated Kermit's mouth and head, while the hands were maneuvered by remote controls.
Wow.
In a concept designed by special effects expert Robbie Knott, cars were customized for the Muppet driving scenes. Guided by video cameras and monitors, Knott steered the vehicle from the trunk, while puppeteers were tucked beneath the dashboard and other areas of the car. Director James Frawley noted that the filmmakers tried to minimize the use of visual and optical effects through creative camera work, in keeping with Henson's concept of Muppets as a cross between the art of hand puppetry and marionettes. Frawley placed Muppets in the foreground of the frame to augment their size, but also tried to compose them as full figures to avoid an image that was too confining. Knott explained that the giant version of Animal was not a miniature or a robot, but an actual 55-foot puppet operated by 2 people. Which is insane. The music.
Wow. So in that big like showdown scene in the West, that's
It's like a whole ass puppet.
What in the world?
The musical finale on the Hollywood soundstage involved over 250 Muppet characters and required the participation of 137 members from the organization Puppeteers of America. The film's music and lyrics were written by Paul Williams and Kenneth Asher. Regarding the music's composition, Williams said, quote, "Jim Henson gave you more creative freedom than anybody I've ever worked with in my life. I said, you want to hear the songs as we're writing them? He said, no, I'll hear them in the studio. I know I'm going to love them. You just don't get that kind of freedom on projects these days." In 1979, the New York Times said the Muppet Movie, which introduces to motion pictures Kermit the Frog, Fozzie the Bear, Miss Piggy, and the rest of Jim Henson's extraordinary puppets we know from Sesame Street and the Muppet Show, demonstrates once again that there's always room in movies for unbridled amiability when it's governed by intelligence and wit. The film is a straight from the shoulder Muppet spoof of all those movies in which real life celebrities reenact the lives that led them to become famous enough for the movies to be made about them. In 1979, the LA Times said, "As you might well expect, it is hip, fun, funny, technically ingenious, fast-moving, melodious, richly produced, contemporary, and equally and utterly beguiling to grown-ups and small persons." In 1979, Roger Ebert said, "Jolson sang, Barrymore spoke, Garbo laughed, and now Kermit the Frog rides a bicycle." The Muppet Movie not only stars the Muppets, but for the first time shows us their feet. And if you can figure out how they were able to show Kermit pedaling across the street, then you are less of a romantic than I am. I prefer to believe he did it himself.
Do you have the scoop on how he did it?
Oh, I'm sure they just puppeted it. I don't know. I'm gonna be with Ebert. Just say let it be. All right. Well, let's. Had you as our Muppet series person, had you seen this movie before? What's your impression of the first ever Muppet movie?
Oh yeah, I've seen it before for sure. This is the third time I think I've seen it. I don't know. I think it's fun to compare it and the show, which is why I wanted to compare the two and just kind of see how different the characters are portrayed, and just kind of see how much like they physically evolved too from like the pilot episode.
Yeah, let's start there. We'll talk a little bit about the pilot episode of the Muppet Show. Yeah, the format is a little different. Like I mentioned, this is kind of like the first.
It's kind of like almost like a sitcom kind of thing where you have the thing itself, the stage, but then there's all like the behind the scenes stuff too. I almost compare it to The Office, but it's not really like that because they're not like interviewing anybody. It's not just the show itself. It's also like all the shenanigans behind the set that Kermit is having to deal with constantly, which I think is funny. Because they make him out to be like this loving, sweet, like just guy with a big dream in the show, but I feel like he's a little bit of a dick in the movies. But I feel like he's a little bit of a dick in the show, or kind of just like grumpy and stressed out and like.
Well, I've been rewatching the Larry Sanders Show, which is a sitcom from the 90s that is spoofing, a late night talk show host, and like just kind of the machinations behind that. And this kind of reminded me a little bit of that, where it's also kind of spoofing a late night talk show,
Hmm.
in like the Johnny Carson,
Right.
Merv Griffith, like, that Dick Cavett kind of way. Um, but it's also just like you include like Muppets. Um, it's it is kind of different. I think.
But they're all just like their own little character, you know? They're all very
Mhm,
sincere. And I love how in the world of the Muppet universe, there's just humans and there's Muppets and there's animals that are the same animals as those Muppets, but there's not really a distinction either. Everybody's treated the same, except that people eat frog legs. So,
yeah, and the thing that I always like about whether it's the Muppet Show or the Muppet Movie, I like how like it's never a question. Oh, this is like is there a puppet with me, or like it's like it just kind of is taken as is.
yeah,
There are Muppets living amongst us in the world
right.
that you just kind of go, oh, it's a Muppet. It's like
Yeah,
it's like seeing seeing a cat or something. You're just like, oh yeah,
right.
that's just in the world too.
A frog, a pig. Yeah. And they
Yeah.
just talk. Um, so much of the show I love them both. I mean, I love just the concept of the Muppets. And I read part of this Jim Henson autobiography a while back. I never finished it. But it talked so much about like kind of his rise and how he kind of got the Muppets was like really kind of his big dream. And I think he would have liked to even do more with them, but his like whole push for them because he stayed with children's for so long with Sesame Street. Sesame Street came first. But his vision for them was always that like this can be for adults. This isn't just like puppets, and this medium does not just have to be like for little like kitschy things for kids. Like this can be serious and kind of still be for kids a little bit, but also um, can be for more of an adult audience. Like I think the original Muppet Show came on at night. It wasn't a daytime show for like little children.
Hmm.
Um, and just reading so much about like how he, you know, grew it and how he learned and really just like really his broke it like busted his ass like learning all of these really intense ways to maneuver them, and he would practice in the mirror, and like his relationship to the franchise was so intense. His wife and him actually like split before he died, a couple of years before he died, because like they just she was his business partner for basically before she was even in a romantic relationship with him, and it just like
She's
was
like
such
too
an
much
intense.
Muppets.
Yeah, it was too much because he took it so seriously. I mean, he was almost like a method person for just like how intense it was, so wrapped up in his head. And I know there was a part of it too in the story. I mean, he really popularized, I think, puppetry in America because I
Hmm.
think before Jim Henson, puppets weren't really. I mean, they're still not really like a huge deal, I guess, but they really weren't much. And he did this whole tour in Europe where he saw all these different like puppet groups performing um, just so he could learn and take notes and try to bring some of that to America. But what did you think of the show?
It was good. No, I enjoy it's it kind of it has its it's again it's set up. It reminded me even more than like a late night show. It reminded me more of like a variety show like of
Mhm,
around that time, like something more like the Smothers Brothers or proto proto like SNL,
mhm,
um because it's kind of just it goes from like it has a nice flow of like bit, guest, or
mhm.
sketch, guest, sketch, like, and everything's kind of being like you described, being kind of um um binded in between by something going on backstage or
Right,
something going on in the theater somewhere, or Statler and Waldorf, or like it has all these different characters in different places that
right,
it can kind of like bind the different things without having to go like, and now it's so and so doing this. It's just kind of like you'll like a sketch will happen. They'll cut to Statler and Waldorf, and they'll like make a comment, and they'll cut
right.
back, and there's like something else happening. Um, I also kind of like that the guest seems like they're enjoying it. They're just
Yeah,
like they're kind of like this, it's just like again, they just kind of find it very, very like jovial and silly. They're like, this is great. I'm fine playing off of Kermit.
I love the guests because I've seen the whole first season. I love the guests that talk to them just like they would talk to anybody, but it must be a weird thing to talk as if you're talking to a person, but you're just talking to, a
Yeah.
frog that just happens to move in kind of this funny way. But some of the guests, like her, she does a really good job just kind of standing up and talking and making the eye contact and not really seeming like she's doing any kind of funny, odd thing.
Yeah, for reference, the episode we watched was with Juliet Prowse,
Mm,
who is
the dancer.
a dancer. Yeah,
And what did you think of the dancing sequence in it with with like it
it was
kind of
cool.
yeah, it was so cool. They do this really neat sequence where she's kind of dancing a ballet, but they have these like tall human-sized puppets that are kind of like dancing and doing like ballet moves with her. But then I don't know if it's like a special effect thing or something that they do on the stage. That can be really hard to see or to tell like where the stage setting ends and if they're like going into some kind of special effects thing with it
Yeah.
where you don't see anything but like the moving puppets and I don't know. It's just like really mesmerizing to me. I love how
No,
beautiful it is, but like so talented and
no, it was a cool, and it's a kind of just like this like cool little sequence,
mhm.
and it kind of I can see how it was something that people latched onto that was a little different. It's different than like the guest going like on a talk show or doing something
Mhm.
like that. It's like you go there and you talk a little bit, but then you like maybe do a little short performance with the Muppets, which is kind
Right.
of fun. No, I liked it. Like I said, it kind of reminded me of. It felt very in tune with like a variety show
Mhm.
of that time period, um, and so like I can see why when watching the movie when people like Steve Martin or Mel Brooks show up in this, like it makes sense. Like those are sketch comedians. Those are people coming from
Right.
Mother's Brothers and SNL and things like that.
Yeah. So then tell me a little bit like as you kind of watched the show and then the movie, what did you think?
The movie, yeah, the movie's good because, like you said, it kind of like really establishes the personalities. Like you kind of get a
Mhm.
little bit more time with everybody. You can see that 3 years later, they're a little bit more developed. The first episode you watch, Miss Piggy's not really there.
The only
You
thing
get
she does is like I think what like the choir scene and she just goes I love him. Like she's talking about Kermit. I love the way she says that, like Kermit, and then she goes, "I love him." Just so quick.
Yeah. But like, yeah, she's not really prominent. You kind of get a little bit of like Fozzie Bear and some other folks, but the ones who are like much more, Kermit's pretty much the same as you see him throughout. Statler and Waldorf are the same. They like just come in and start shit talking people. It's just kind of funny that like they start to kind of develop their personalities, and then you
Right.
add more. So like when if you watch like the pilot episode like we did, and then you watch this movie, there's like a bunch of other characters who I was familiar with because I've seen later Muppet stuff,
Right.
but aren't in that first episode. Um, but no, I thought I enjoyed the movie. I didn't like it as we'll watch it next week, but I'd previously seen
Great Muppet
um
Caper.
Great Muppet, which I think is just a little bit more complete of a movie. This one,
Mhm.
it feels, even though it's different, they describe it as a little bit different from the television show in that it's Muppets interacting in the real world. It still has a little bit of like that sketch show. It reminds me of like when they take sketches from like SNL, like Wayne's World,
Right.
or things like that, and like develop it into a movie where you're like you have this character who works so well in like a just like kind of a short sketch, and you're trying to prolong it to different things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's
Right.
like it kind of feels like that where you have some scenes generally like with the Doc Hopper character who's kind of like propelling the narrative that kind of bridges things together, but most of it is just kind of like it's kind of sketch with Muppets happening, and they'll move on to the next set of Muppets, and you just got like he meets Fozzie Bear, then he meets Gonzo, then he meets Miss
Yeah.
Piggy, then he meets Dr. Teeth, and they like like it just kind of moves on to those different things. And along the way, also you just kind of have like these great cameos of varying degrees. I think my favorite, outside of the Orson Welles one at the end, I also like Steve Martin as like the overly obnoxious waiter, because it's just like,
Overly rude, like weirdly hostile, but they
well,
don't
it's
even pick up on it.
playing off of like that's just kind of like like that's what's funny about it, because that's kind of the characters he would play, in on like SNL sketches and some of his early movies. And
Uh,
like, and it's funny because he's like playing that off the Muppets. Like it's a real, like he like pops the, what does he say? It's sparkling mescal.
he twists it off.
He twisted. He's like, he's like, this is the, some of the best stuff from Idaho, and like just twists it off and like pops the cap.
And would you like to smell the cat?
Yeah, he's good. Like the Steve Martin thing. It's just great. That was the one that kind of stood out to me. I did like Dom DeLuise, who's just like randomly rowing a boat in the middle of a swamp when he finds Kermit. That
Yeah.
one's kind of just a fun one. But no, the top one is just at the end when Orson Welles, swings around the desk and goes, bring out the standard rich and famous
I know
contract
it's
for
such a
Mr. Kermit
sinister
the Frog.
scene, but then it's like what he's saying is so kind.
No, they were just like, Orson, just say it, deliver the line like you're delivering a line in Hamlet, and thank you. And that's what he does.
Fantastic. But yeah,
Um,
I like how they play with, like, they say at the beginning of the movie, this is a retelling of how we became what we became. But then they play with that, like they're self-aware within the movie that they're making a movie, but they barely draw attention to it. But then they do every now and then, like Kermit will make a joke, but then he'll kind of look at the camera like, "Did you hear that? I made a joke." Like the Hare Krishna thing, I think they reference it like 3 or 4 times,
killer Harry Krishna jokes, let me tell you.
and then at one point he's like, "Oh no, this is gonna be a running gag." Like he's like, "Oh, look at this goofy thing that we decided to do, but I'm the one who's doing it, and it's also my movie." It's so silly. Or the bit where they show up and they meet Electric Mayhem, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to. We don't like rehash the whole thing. Here, just read the script," and then they proceed to read the entire. It's so goofy.
I think my favorite joke in that one is when they like open the door and they're like performing and they go, I don't think they're Presbyterians. Because they're playing in the church. Yeah, I think the other thing that's just kind of neat, and that's why I wanted to mention in the notes a lot of like the technical stuff behind the scenes, but
Mhm.
like the way that it doesn't, it very much feels like, it feels like they're puppets, but there's like a degree of charm to it, but at the same time it doesn't feel like they're puppets.
Right.
And like the lengths that they went into to like kind of develop just the look of the film, so that you're not getting like the strings attached or anything. You're just kind of like getting them, completely like they're like really like really cognizant of how to like bring, as realistically as you can, bring the Muppets into the real world. um like a lot of that's just, like whether they're driving in the car, or just the various like the different scenes that they're able to perform, with the knowledge that, yeah, they're like doing puppetry under it. um it's just like astounding when you kind of think about that small thing, and then you look at like the different set pieces in this movie. You're just like, how much like effort is going into just this small scene.
Right, and you think, like, "That looks complicated, surely it isn't that no. Like, if you looks complicated, it absolutely was overly complicated, and they did it. Like, I can't remember which movie it is, but there's a scene where somebody's, like, floating, and they couldn't do it underwater because water just kinda, like, drenched them, so I think they had to have, like, the puppet floating in oil or something just bizarre. Like, if it looks complicated, chances are it's more complicated than you would imagine to pull off.
Yeah, it kind of, it feels to me like very indebted to like the early days of movies, where like you have directors like George Méliès coming up with different tricks to kind of like, play with magic for the audience, because you have this new form of storytelling. And
Yeah.
like to me, like watching the Muppet movie, and even the movies after, like there's like this kind of just kind of like technical appreciation that you kind of have to have, and this kind of just movie magic approach of like I appreciate the lengths and the creativity that they do to like develop these set pieces and these scenes, because it's kind of like we're going to make this as realistic as we possibly can, um even if that means, I guess, putting a Muppet in oil to make it look like they're underwater.
Right. They're all about the craft, and I love that. I love it. What was your favorite song?
I like Rainbow Connection.
Really?
That one's a good one. I also like I also like that they, in the episode of the pilot episode, they had mana mana. which
You can't. You gotta. Like, you gotta know where that comes
which I
from.
really love that, because I like the part where he's doing mana mana and he's like walking out the door and then he leaves and then he
He
calls on the
calls.
phone and they go mana mana.
I
It's
love
just
it.
stupid. I enjoyed it. No, I like that one. Moving Along's fun.
Moving Right Along is my favorite. I like it a lot.
That one's a fun one.
Who's your favorite character in this movie?
I don't know. I like Rolf the dog. He's fun.
The dramatic "Women Suck" song that they sing, and then he finds out Piggy has been kidnapped after they get done like trash talking women.
Oh yeah.
Their "Women Suck" song. Can't live with them.
Do you feel, as somebody who's seen like all the other stuff before, what do you feel like sets apart this movie from like the Great Muppet Caper, but also like the literary ones we're going to talk about, the kind of reintroduction ones? Like, what about this? Do you feel like this kind of sets the level, well?
Sorry, Cooper just got into a bag.
I can hear.
What
do you think? Do you feel like this kind of sets the level in terms of where the Muppets end up going with movies?
I mean, it's hard to say. I like looking at the older ones, and then as we're gonna move into the newer ones too, because as time goes on, some of the actors, like Jim Henson, dies, and he didn't even direct this one. I think the only one he directed is the Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah.
But the way that it's kind of setting up who these people are that they're gonna end up playing with later, and kind of expanding on, and even especially when they do adaptations and the characters are playing characters, the way they kind of have them like an actor acting as this character, acting as, I don't know, I think it's just fun how they do that over and over as a franchise, and it's fun to kind of see the character at its roots of like, this is kind of what they were going for, but then how they kind of expand on it a little bit more and more with each.
Yeah, well, it's like, like when we're going to talk about Treasure Island and Wizard of Oz, and so it's like you have like the Muppet characters playing so you have these literary adaptations where you've probably read the book, or you've seen like a movie version or whatever of like of Wizard of Oz or Treasure Island,
right?
But then you're like seeing like the interpretation of it of the Muppet character, which is interpretation from the actor,
right?
So like it's just kind of this like 3-level thing going
right.
on. I'm sure we'll talk about that in that episode for sure.
No, I think that's what I'm saying is I think it's fun to just kind of watch those layers of it when they do the adaptations. And even like we watched Christmas Carol a few weeks ago for over Christmas, and I like how they introduce, and we're not talking about it for this series, but they introduce like Kermit as this character or Fozzie Bear as this character. They don't say like Jim Henson playing Kermit playing, like they don't. So I don't know. I think even as adaptations, they're really strong. I mean, I think that just the series, I don't know. I'm really curious to hear what you think as we go on, and if it grates on you or if you have fun with it.
No, I like the Muppets. They're fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy them.
It's hard to explain to people why I'm like obsessed with them, but I don't know. There's just something like just wholesome but hilarious about them, and you just enjoy spending time with them and seeing what they do and how they, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think as we talked about, like between the first episode and the movie, like they've all kind of developed these their own little like the actors and Henson and his company, like they all kind of develop these personalities for the
Right,
different. I'd be curious. I'm sure I could, if I had more time to kind of do some research, you could probably learn about like how that developed over time, whether that was like, the actor who was playing them, or they kind of like mapped out, this is how I want Kermit the Frog to act, or something like
right.
that beforehand. But I would be curious to kind of learn what that process was like. Did they kind of have a sheet of like, this is how I want Fozzie Bear to be like, this is how I want Miss Piggy to be like, like kind of like or
Right.
was it just kind of, did they just like naturally kind of see where the character went and see how people see like what people were reacting to best with the characters?
Yeah. I think at least Kermit and Sam the Eagle, were some of the oldest characters, like were some of the very, very first like puppet characters that he ever had. They
Yeah.
developed over time, and I think Kermit wasn't originally like a big deal, and also I think he wasn't originally green. He might have been blue. Um, but yeah, like how they decide to pinpoint exactly who this character is and develop a personality. And I think a lot of it too isn't just Jim Henson, but the other performers that he collaborated with for so many years, kind of making their own characters, or like kind of bringing them to life in their own way.
Yeah, and you also like, Jim Henson played multiple characters. You have somebody like
Mhm.
Frank Oz, who has been a
Right.
part of it for so long, who played, multiple characters. Um, yeah, and it's just kind of, you think about like the degree of work that the Henson Company did on other stuff, whether it was like, Jim Henson directing something like Labyrinth, or the work they did, on Sesame Street, but also like, you have characters in like the original trilogy of Star Wars movies with like the
Right.
Jim Henson character controlled things like that. It's kind of interesting. Like it's fun to kind of look at that also and kind of see the range of puppetry to it as
Mhm.
well. Because like I think of like Yoda and other like characters in the original Star Wars trilogy that are relatively limited. Like they don't, they're not doing too much moving around, and it's
Right.
even now today people like kind of laugh at how at like the hokiness, at least in their eyes, of like how Yoda moves around and like Return of the Jedi and things like
Mhm.
that.
And
Or
that's
in
that's Henson Yoda is.
yeah, that's the Henson Company worked on that.
Wow.
And then you look at like the Muppets and like I like in comparison to like those characters in like Star Wars, I do like there's kind of like this um flexibility and more like mobility to the Muppets. Like they're able to like they seem much more um like you get they're not very stiff. Like they feel like they can kind of move around and have I'm
Right.
like thinking of the song and dance number in the pilot episode with Fozzie Bear and was it whatever that guy's name is? Forgot what the name. Um, but like Fozzie Bear's like taking his hat off and like moving it around and like throwing it and stuff like that. And like the character, there's the little like I don't know whatever fucking creature it is in Return of the Jedi with Jabba the Hutt. He's just like sitting there like laughing and like can only move like this far. It's just very like limited. So it's like the Muppets are kind of fun because they're just very they're much more mobile. They just kind of feel um lifelike, but like
Right.
they feel like they can do a little bit more than just kind of like move forward and side to side and things like that. There is like kind of
Yeah.
there's a personality in their movement, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
They breathe so much life into, and like expressiveness, like into some of them, like just simplest looking things, even things with no eyes, or I don't know, just like so limited facial characteristics. They're able to make so much expression just from like little subtle movements of their hands. They have to
Hmm.
practice in front of a mirror so long to like mm,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just very creative, and it's so neat. um I love it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the pilot episode in the first Muppet movie.
I'm just excited for the series. Curious to hear how the rest of it goes.
Yeah. We'll say it just this once because I don't want to like outwardly just be sitting there promoting Disney Plus, but most of these you can find on Disney Plus.
Mm.
They have the entire Muppet Show as well as this first movie.
Definitely check out the show. The original show is so fun. It's so good. I think
Yeah,
the first 2 episodes especially are just really good.
yeah, and like I was just like I was rolling through at least the first season of just like who some of the guests are, and I'm
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I would love to watch an episode with Harvey Korman and the Muppets because Harvey Korman's super funny, and
Yeah.
you got the Muppets with him. It sounds hilarious. All right. Well, that'll wrap up this episode. You can find us, you can find Cinematary if you'd like to learn more on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where you can catch up with all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to support the show, whether that's $1, $5, 20, whatever you want to support, if you just want to throw us a buck so that next time we have a Patreon pick series, you can subject us to something. Go to patreon.com/Cinematary and donate there. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marthathi, Titus Arthur, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Next week, like we said, we're going to be talking about the Great Muppet Caper as we continue through the Muppet series. But until then, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.